on this week's episode of Tides of Lore.
These attackers seem to almost sacrifice themselves to us, perhaps for some higher purpose.
Hey, shooters gotta shoot, dude.
I don't even know, man. I guess he's on a boat.
Look at him.
The shape collapses inward, becomes a single star drifting up into the moonlight before vanishing.
Yeah, I love dragging my meat wagon, dude.
Holy magic does not cover brain damage. Should've got that in your package.
I thought that orc popped out of nowhere.
Y'all two went and ran off, had a little ragtag wedding, I see.
Someone needs to just bring this up again and throw it in his face.
They will build a new city within its wilds to rival even Orgrimmar itself. Every episode of Tides of Lore is made possible by our amazing supporters. Thank you so much to Xander Harris, Brock Penrod, The Away Fan, Insulin FTW, Bubba BSE, and Arez Jerry. And let's give an extra special shout out to our latest members, our newest Tide Lord, Jake Hilpert, and our two newest Tidelings, Watto21 and Mo. Your guys' support truly means the world to us, and if you guys would like to join the Tide, check us out on YouTube or Patreon. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the 45th episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva. I am one half of your host team, joined as always by, I don't have a fun intro this time, by Tim. How you doing this week, Tim?
They call me Tim. I'm good, bro. I'm streaming a lot of HC. I got to level 30 on the Paladin, that's fun. I'm tanking everything I can on him. And we got our other characters on the Horde. I got my mage 22 ready to go for Wailing Caverns. Hopefully, I don't know if you're feeling it tonight, but maybe we can do some Wailing Caverns or something.
I do think that is the goal. I have some stuff I have to do after this recording session, but
okay. I put you on the spot while we're recording, so I have something to fall back on, right? No, but that's been fun.
So I have some evidence of blame.
Exactly. We're all alive except our friend Manny tried going to dead mines, and I don't know what he jumped off of. I think, it must have been like a Zeppelin or something. And as Horde, he jumped off of it and landed on an island and died. So, yeah. He has a warrior, though. So he might help us with the warrior. But I'm excited, man. Hardcore's been fun. I've been enjoying it. If you haven't tuned into the stream, I don't have a set schedule. My schedule's been pretty hectic, but sometimes I'll stream at night, a couple times a week. So tune in to Tides of Lore on YouTube.
Yep, usually around, let's say probably 6, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, or like 5 p.m. Pacific or something like that. So
it just depends.
Yeah, just usually around that time, a bit late into the night, I guess I would say. But yeah, check those out. We've been having a lot of fun over there, talking with a lot of you guys. And yeah, Tim's living up to his titles of never dying.
I don't die.
He's like PewDiePie, but not a liar.
I don't die. What have you been doing?
I have been mount farming mostly. I feel like I say it every week, but I mean, I'm stuck in a lull right now. I'm eagerly awaiting October 7th when I can get my hands on some Legion Remix content.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fun.
Because I was playing my other rogue, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned last week that rogue's dead. But after that, I was like, maybe I want to start another character, and then I was like, nah, I kind of am just having fun, like keeping it like as an experience to play with the boys. So that's what I've stayed away from Classic, at least in that regard for. But yeah, I've been continuing my journey through Shadowlands mount farming, which has been just thrilling, I must say.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a grand old time.
It's just like, God, it really is so gambling, because there's like days on end where I'm just no mounts, and then it'll be like one day where it's just like mount, and it keeps me hooked. It gets me right back in there. Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in.
I don't care anymore for mount farming. I got all the cool ones. They're just numbers at this point,
I like high numbers too. Now I'm pushing for the most mounts out of anybody in the world ever.
Okay.
Which I'll never get. But yeah, that's mostly what I've been doing. We've had a pretty hectic schedule with how we've been recording these, so I've been doing a lot of recording and editing and all that stuff, because we've recorded late last week, we're recording early this week, and yeah, it's been an interesting time. But Shouts out to Tim once again getting his promotion.
I've just been busy, bro. I apologize.
And
I don't have set days off.
I'm not trying to talk no shit. I'm genuinely just proud of you, man. And don't forget about us small guys when you
This is my last episode.
when you get up there. He's actually going to start his own podcast. But yeah, so it's mostly just been a pretty chaotic week of doing that sort of stuff. But last week in the podcast, we ended up discussing the last short story that we will be discussing for the Cataclysm experience, where we went through a lot of the leadership, and now we're getting into more of the novels and the actual expansion itself this week. But last week we discussed Bane Bloodhoof's story about him kind of coming into his own as leader of the Tauren and his kind of clash with Garrosh Hellscream. What do you remember about last week, Tim?
I remember Quillboars, so many Quillboars, and when you see one Quillboar, that means there's more around the corner, right? There's never just one Quillboar. And they underestimated the Quillboar. They wanted to kind of purge them from their lands, but they didn't. Why didn't the Tauren want to start a war? Because there was already the Cataclysm happening. I think that was their reasoning.
There was already the Cataclysm. There was already the war with the Alliance and the Horde that's been kicking up. There's already just a bunch of problems that had happened. And he's like, I just don't think more conflict in Mulgore, in my own backyard, is the play right now.
Like, Garrosh was like, no, they're too close. Oh yeah, the water. They needed more water, didn't they?
Yeah.
That was the whole reason. And then the Quillboar were tainting the water supply or something.
They were trying to get water themselves. I mean, as we eventually come to find in the story, that they're kind of run rabid because they haven't been able to get water themselves. So that's why they've been commencing these attacks. So eventually Bane meets up with Hamel, Rune Totem, and he's like, fix it. And Hamel's like, all right, cool. And that all leads to that climax that we saw at the end of that story, where Garrosh is nearly killed by Trash, saved by the Sunwalkers and Bane, and they are just like, water. They create a river for them, which is such a convenient ending to that story, I thought. It was just like, and then there's water. There's no need for us to fight. And the Quillboar are like, yeah, okay, cool. The end.
Let's do that in the first place.
Like, that's what I was thinking, right? Like, I mean, I guess once they figured out why, it's especially more of a reason why he should be like, no, let's not fight. Like, I can figure this out. But even still, I was just surprised that it was so sudden. When he first started sending the water down the tunnels in the story, I'm like, is he really going to just drown all of these Quillboar to death?
Yes.
No. Yes. Back to the Earth Mother with you, Hamel says. But yeah, so they eventually get that all solved, and Bane kind of reaffirms his leadership of the Tauren people, and there were some people that were like, we're going to leave, we're going to go be, nomads again. And he's like, nah. And then they see that happen, and they're like, nah. And yeah, check out that episode if you haven't. But also, from last week, we had some comments. And continuing with our new format that we tried out last week, Tim, what comment did you want to highlight from last week?
I like the way fans comment. Talking about Vol'jin goes kind of hard. As someone who doesn't play, I enjoyed the intro sequence, played near the end. Helps tie the story to the game. A few weeks back, you guys asked about favorite mounts, solely based off of looks. My top 3 are Meat Wagon, Huntmaster's Dire Wolfhawk, and Great Northern Elderhorn. Keep crushing, dudes. What do you think about those choices?
What is the Great Northern Wolfhawk?
I think that's fucking Hunter's class. Is that not the class mount?
Could you read me the name of that one more time?
Huntmaster's
the
Dire
Huntmaster's Loyal Wolfhawk. Well, regardless, I didn't even know that these Wolfhawks were a thing, because I haven't done the class order hall for the Hunters. But yes, you do appear to be very correct. And that's cool. Meat Wagon's a huge dub. That's like an absolutely massive dub.
Yeah.
I think the Meat Wagon is, when Reforged came out, and I hated how dog shit it was.
At least I got the Meat Wagon.
It's the only thing that kept me from refunding it, dude. I loved the Meat Wagon. The blood trail when you're driving it.
You can.
He doesn't know this, but when you're sitting in the game and you use each mount typically has some sort of special animation that you can make it do. And the Meat Wagon has its own special one where it drags back the catapult and fires a chunk of meat.
He knows.
It's awesome.
He knows. I've told him. Yeah, I love dragging my Meat Wagon, dude. It's a good time.
And what was the last one more time?
To do Great Northern Elderhorn. What is that? Is that the moose?
That's a moose, yeah. It's actually the riding harness from leatherworking. Yep. Cool looking, though. Not as cool as... Oh, which one's the... Echiro?
Yeah, Spirit of...
Echiro's really cool. Spirit of Echiro's really cool. But, you know, I busted my ass for a lot of those mounts, so I can't hate on any of them. I think that the moose mounts are really cool. I think the Tarns, the High Mountain Tarns, have one of the better racial mounts.
It's all right. There's a lot of moose. Meese.
Nothing crazy.
However you say it.
But yes, making my way over to me, I wanted to highlight a comment that we had over on Spotify by Herja Patu, saying, within the last 2 weeks, I have found your channel and binged all the episodes while at work. I have played WoW since the end of Vanilla, actively since the end of MoP, and the lore has always been the #1 reason for me to play. This channel works as a fine rehearsal. Just keep up the good work, and I shall follow. It was nice to hear about Vol'jin and Zalazane's friendship. The amount of times that I've gone and killed Zalazane, and he's killed me, and he still comes back. Taz Dingo. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I could be wrong. I think the very first character in Hardcore that I ended up making did die too, Zalazane.
That's a scary
He shrunk me, and my life was... It's just over, bro, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of
And you
other
go running, you
trolls.
just end up, you get hit by some like immolation or something like that, and you're cooked. But not anymore. He's been handled. Thank you, Wansamdi.
We're better now.
We're better now. But that is all that we had to discuss with you guys from last week. And moving into this week, it's time to finally discuss the novel that I've been constantly talking about us discussing. It's time to begin the Wolfheart novel as we make our way through this story.
Is this a big variant novel?
This is just a big alliance novel. There is some Horde stuff going on, but this is a lot of the Night Elves. This is a lot of Varian. This is a lot of the Worgen. This is a lot of, I mean, just all the races, the alliance you'll really see come into play here. So we're gonna check that out, and let's just hop into that. Hey Tim, did you know that Tides of Lore is a Patreon now?
Oh yeah? What do I get if I throw some support on Patreon?
You'll get ad-free episodes, a member shout-out, live stream access, and exclusive VODs, the full package.
So basically, skip the ads, get your name in the show, and help us keep telling Warcraft stories?
Exactly. Join the Tide at patreon.com/tidesoflore. Starting with, you open up this prologue of the story in Northrend, where you have these orc laborers trying to haul these enormous tarp-covered cages up these gangplanks onto these ships, this massive Horde fleet. And nearby, one of these orcs looks over and he's like, dang, it would be a lot easier if these Kodos or these mammoths would help us to drag these containers onto the ship. But the Kodos and the mammoths absolutely refuse to go anywhere near these crates. And that's when suddenly Northrend's weather explodes into a violent storm and just begins battering these ships, where these terrible roars echo from the holds of all of these ships that have already been loaded up, and you see that there are multiple of these terrifying creatures, whatever they are, imprisoned on all sorts of these ships in this fleet that are awaiting their departure. And that's when specifically the one right in front of this orc starts thrashing about really hard, and this thunderous roar comes from inside of it. And the fleet captain by the name of Brilm, this scarred veteran with one-eyed and tattooed skin, takes charge of the chaos as he begins bellowing orders for people to brace the cage and ready their weapons and prepare just in case the beast breaks free. And that's when the creature tears through one of these tarps and grabs one of the guards and drags it inside. And he says that he doesn't hear anything except a brief moment of flesh, bone, and armor shattering all alike in its grasp. As panic begins spreading amongst the crew, Brilm refused to falter, driving his men to try and contain the catastrophe. And that's when he reaches into his sack and he produces this shaman sleeping powder and hurls it through the tarp. And for a moment, the orcs fear that the gushing wind would ruin the throw and have it just gust away, but the packet does slip through the gaff, and inside, the horrific sounds of feeding and crushing that were echoing before grow labored before giving way to silence and a staggering crash. And with this, they're like, okay, well, that was fun. Anyway, get that bad boy on the boat. And it just says that you get a brief glimpse of these creatures as these brutal, half-giant Northrend monstrosities. And it's made clear through this internal monologue that Brilm has that this is a living weapon meant for the Horde's war effort, ordered by none other than Garrosh Hellscream.
I'm trying to think what these creatures are, but I'm not quite sure. Does it give any more description?
I mean, we will see more, not in this episode, but I mean, I guess we kind of see more in this episode too, but not really. Not too much more of a description. I guess I could just tell you they have hooves. That's not very helpful. But
I was gonna say,
think
don't
Northrend,
spill
think
the beans
hooves,
yet.
think giant. Yep. And that is a lot of this like early segment, which is why I don't want to, because I do know what they are. By the end of the story, they make it pretty clear. I mean, 100% clear. But you'll see in due time. But that is where our story shifts away from Northrend to the wonderful, perfect, unequivocally the best starting zone in all. Never mind, I'm actually just fucking with you guys. But we do go to Darnassus.
Ugh.
And I love my night elves. So let's go, Darnassus, where we open up with which one's it gonna be, Tim? Who's it gonna be?
Superman.
No, you're wrong. It's Wonder Woman with Tyrande Whisperwind.
Draw forth the moon.
Walking through the moonlit temple garden, seeking peace in the aftermath of Deathwing's Cataclysm. And Tyrande's mind is troubled as they are still dealing with this ever-growing struggle where, like, we're getting kind of old. I'm kind of starting to feel it in my joints a little bit. Like, you know, the first time you ever threw a ball and, like, pulled something, you're like, oh, no. I think that's what she's experiencing for the first time in, like, 14,000 years. But with that, her concentration is changed to a more important topic that she considers, this upcoming Alliance Summit, which we have discussed in previous episodes. And I actually did mean to highlight one of our other comments that we got a few weeks back that was like, the reason the Varian stuff happens in his story and then the Anduin stuff happens in his story is because, like, Wolfheart takes place before, and then that stuff happens during this, and then by the end of it's a whole jumbled mess. But anyway, just know that Anduin and Varian have yet to have their little fight. And that's where we're at in the story. But yes, there's this upcoming Alliance Summit where they're all looking to gather due to this growing aggression of Garrosh Hellscream, whose relentless hunger for the forests of Ashenvale have begun to threaten the Kaldorei homeland. And she and Malfurion Stormrage, oh, the fucking goat, will identify a strong leader to unify the fractured alliance, and yet throughout this she worries that Stormwind may not even attend. Scarred by war and instability, it remains unpredictable, and that the absence of Varian Wrynn himself would leave the entire gathering undermined. But as she's beginning to have a little panic attack, she's engulfed by a vision that she's given by Elune, and the temple gardens dissolve, and she finds herself standing back in the War of the Ancients, where all around her lies wreckage of a brutal battlefield, and the burning legion surging forward unchecked, the fire and shadow of them consuming the land behind them, and Tyrande can only watch, powerless, as history replays before her eyes in a dire message from Elune herself. And amid all this carnage, she notices one figure in particular, the ancient wolf wild god known as Goldrin, charging forward, leading a vast pack of wolves against the Legion. As these wolves tear through all of these fell guards and clash ferociously, they fight, and they are, I mean, in this part of the novel, they describe it as them just slaughtering through so many of these fell guards, but eventually they describe it as like this undefeatable wave of demons coming after Goldrin, and eventually he is struck down by a devastating blow to his spine. And as this ancient begins to falter, a dark brown wolf leaps to his side and begins slaying the attacker that struck him, rallying the pack to fight harder. And though Goldrin collapses and still dies, the brown wolf grows fiercer and fiercer, fighting with an unrelenting rage until he begins to rise into two legs, shifting into something more, where this figure begins to transform into a human warrior, with his lupine howl merging into a battle cry, and his followers shifting as well, becoming human soldiers who turn the tide and rout the demonic army. And as these slain demons get struck down more and more, they as well begin shifting into orcs, blurring past and present. And at the climax of the vision, the spirit of Goldrin fuses with the champion, who is revealed to be none other than King Varian Wrynn, Logush reborn.
So Varian has split before, right? And now he's getting infused. I don't know. How much of left of this guy is actually Varian?
Well, I don't think it's that he's, I think it's more like he's always been the champion of Goldrin, right? But when he was split, that part of him was what was split, right? Like that champion of him, which is why the other guy's kind of a baby. So yeah, it's essentially his warrior spirit has been given to him by the wild god Goldrin himself. That's where he gets his ferocity from.
Gotcha.
And eventually, Tyrande's reflection of this is broken when a sentinel approaches, bearing a message from Chandra's Feathermoon, and the news is decisive. King Varian has agreed to attend the Alliance Summit. And to Tyrande, this confirmation aligns perfectly with the vision she was given, as she sees this as not just chance, but this moment of destiny coming into realization, that it is a pivotal role for Varian as Logusht Reborn to lead the Alliance's future. Sure is helpful to have prophecy on your side sometimes, isn't it? Imagine if you had all that doubt. But that is where we see the Ruthrian village down at the base of Teldrassil, where two cloaked knight elfin figures disembark from a vessel. This tall male with silver hair carrying his mate who is gravely ill and coughing blood, doing their best to get as quickly as possible into Teldrassil. The guards stop them for a moment and they're like, hold on, what's going on here? And just doing his best to ignore them, he carries his beloved through the portal into Teldrassil, and the guards that look upon his face actually do end up realizing who it is, and it leaves them shocked. But that's where we come to Malfurion, Stormrage. Oh!
Cenarius, guide me to victory.
The GOAT!
He saves the day,
The greatest
again.
of all time. Yeah, you think that's what's gonna happen? You know what? Go ahead and call your shot. How's the novel gonna end?
Dude, he's never been defeated. I don't know. Malfurion's gonna have all the people come together and they're gonna heal the earth by holding hands and singing a song.
Ooh. We'll see if that comes true. We'll come back to this. But yes, he is in the Oracle Glade where he is communing with the World Tree of Teldrassil, and he's actually preparing to send his spirit into the Emerald Dream. Shocker. And as the branches begin to cradle him and his nature magic begins to flow throughout him, his meditative state reflecting his deep connection to Azeroth's primal forces and this balance of serenity that he has with the earth itself, he begins to ponder about his many, many years of service to nature, and he even looks upon his physical form, where you might have noticed that Malfurion got a few upgrades, like at some point in history, but I guess specifically it's acknowledged here where he has now been given these Stormcrow wings that grow out of the back of his arms, and these Night Saber paws for hands that have these bear claws that grow over the top of them, and of course adorned by his ever-present antlers gifted to him by Narius himself. And despite this immense power that he's been given, he feels the creeping toll of mortality growing on his body as well, following the loss of Nordrassil and the Third War at the end of Warcraft 3's Reign of Chaos campaign. We have to remember, they all lost their immortality, and it has not been restored. But as he begins to be like, all right, go time to get into the Emerald Dream, he hears a call, something urgently jolting him back into consciousness, and he recognizes it as Tyrande's voice, and without hesitation, he snaps into consciousness, jumping out of there into Night Saber form. He begins racing across the land of Darnassus, where eventually he encounters a night elf carrying a dying woman, and the stranger reveals himself, and Malfurion is also absolutely struck with shock at who it is, being none other than Garrosh Shadowsong. You remember this guy, Tim?
Is he not a satyr?
No. You're thinking of Xavius, right? Yeah.
Oh, maybe this is a human warlock. Or am I off again?
Oh, I think I know. No, I actually do think I know who you're talking about. I just don't know the name for sure. But no, Garrosh Shadowsong, we have not talked about in 41 episodes, I think.
I like how you know exactly.
Because he was... Episode 5 was War of the Ancients.
Episode 12, hour or minute 30.
Oh man, I wish I could get the minutes down too. That would be crazy cool. But no, Garrosh Shadowsong is the man who would become like de facto leader during the War of the Ancients for the Night Elven people. Like after all their leaders and all these like super preppy generals started getting turned to paste underneath Demonfoot, Garrosh Shadowsong kind of just, people had this natural attraction to his commands, and he ended up leading them valiantly, where eventually they do, unite at the walls of Ajara's palace and begin to push the demons out, which leads to the big climax with Deathwing and Dragon Soul and the Sargeras and the Broxigar and the everything that goes in Malfurion. That's a pretty crazy story. So check out that episode if you haven't seen it already, but also you gotta read those books. I really I think one of my biggest regrets with the channel is not breaking those into at least 3 episodes.
Maybe we can go back.
To one. That is something I've pondered. But yes, that is where we last really saw Garrosh Shadowsong. I mean, we did see him briefly gain kind of the leadership over the Kaldorei people at the end of that when they do, like, following the Sundering, they go to Mount Hyjal, and he's essentially voted as the new leader of the Kaldorei. But after Illidan does all his messed up stuff and some other problems go on in his life, he ends up leaving that behind. And we don't quite know why, but we're going to get to the bottom of that in this story. As, yes, Garrosh Shadowsong is standing before him. Malfurion had believed him long dead since after the War of the Ancients, as Jared begins to plead for aid for his mate. Shalazar? Yeah. And Malfurion's like, I'll do what I can, but we should get her to the Temple of Elune, because, you know, that's where the real healer is at. So he helps to carry her swiftly to the Temple of Elune, glancing over at her, realizing just how dire her condition is. And that's where we shift to another character. Over at Ashenvale, you have this figure known as Commander Haldrissa Woodshaper, a veteran sentinel under Chandra's Feathermoon, who leads a patrol along the Horde border. At this time, her post seems calm. The tranquility of all of it seems almost surreal, but of course, that is broken by some grim discoveries that they end up falling upon. A dying lightsaber, one of her scouts having fallen, and other signs that the Horde have perhaps pushed deeper into the lands, and begins to think that this is no ordinary patrol of the Horde, but it is a sign of some looming escalation on the horizon. She's pretty spot on, too, because as soon as she comes to that conclusion, an arrow rips out from the trees, and they are ambushed by Orcs raiders mounted on wolves. And this clash is brutal, where it is Night Saber versus Wolf and Night Elf versus Orc, steel and fang and arrows against axes, as Haldrissa begins fighting ferociously, and eventually she gets caught off guard a little bit, slacking a little bit, and she ends up catching a blade to the face, which causes her to lose one of her eyes. But despite this, her attacker is slain, and the Sentinels, despite their losses, prevail, and all of the Orc attackers are slain. Though this victory feels hollow for her, paid for in blood, and like she had already concluded, this was more of a warning for worse to come. She even begins to consider it more. She thinks, maybe this wasn't even like an actual attack. Maybe this was a diversion. These attackers seem to almost sacrifice themselves to us, perhaps for some higher purpose, distract the Sentinels for some greater maneuver, allowing the Horde forces to slip deeper into the forest. And at that realization, her resolve hardens that this was not a raid, but a calculated step to something even more sinister than that. And insisting that there is nothing but outright war coming to Ashenvale, Haldrissa decides to send immediate word to Chandris and Tyrande, though the dread begins gnawing at her that may even come too late. Back in Darnassus, you have Malfurion looking over Jared as Tyrande begins doing her best to try and heal this beloved of his, and he recalls, he's like, dang, time has not been very good to you, Jared. Apparently, even for the immortal, you can see signs of age, but he says it even more as resembles stress, that his once dark hair and beard are now entirely silver, and that his face is lined with the toll of long years of hardship. And as Tyrande Whisperwind calls upon Elune, summoning the silver radiance to bathe her fragile body, the chamber glows with this divine light, and for a fleeting moment, Jared feels nothing but hope, and swiftly, just as much as the hope had risen, the glow fades, leaving her body still and pale. Tyrande lowering her hands, gently looking to Jared and telling him the truth, that she has already passed beyond Elune's reach. And of course, stricken by grief, Jared insists that he had brought her in time, that he should have pushed her harder and carried her faster, and his anguish splits into guilt, being like, maybe it's that pushing that caused her to die. And Tyrande does his best to calm him and being like, you know, her fate was sealed before your guys' arrival. If you want me to TBH with you, dog. As he cradles his dead lover in his arms, whispering his farewells through tears. We get a bit of a time skip where eventually he does compose himself, though the grief is obviously still heavy, and he admits that she had known that she was dying, yet she had chosen to travel with him so that he would not be alone when she passed. And Tyrande's like, hey, you know, I actually recognize this woman from centuries and centuries and centuries ago. We'd always wondered what happened to her. I guess y'all two went and ran off, had a little ragtag wedding, I see. And he explains, he's like, yeah, we kept our love secret, like disillusioned by the divisions in the Kaldorei society following the War of the Ancients, where he had this conflict between the Night Elves and between the Highborn and between the Sentinels and between the Wardens and between all of these people that just seemed to have these growing animosities towards one another. That is why he admits to himself he left. And she had followed him out of devotion, forsaking the order and everything. She gave it up for him. And he thinks about it that she had even given her last strength to once again bring him home. And he begins to ponder that perhaps that was intentional. Perhaps she had also, in her last moments, desired for him to not be alone in the world. And Tyrande begins comforting him, assuring him that she will receive the proper rituals under Elune, but still overwhelmed with grief. He reflects bitterly that the Kaldorei immortality had once made the Night Elves so complacent and blind to the passage of time, and now it is forced in their faces, mortal like all other races.
They're mortal, but do they still age? Like,
they do,
thousands of years?
I mean, they weren't even like immortal. They weren't immortal like that before, where they just couldn't, like, if they got stabbed, they wouldn't die. No, it was just that they didn't age.
So now they do age. And what's the, like, average lifespan?
I mean, it's hard to tell because, I mean, even, like, high elves have been alive thousands of years, right? But, like, you can see Lorthrimar's getting pretty up there.
And how old is he?
He's been alive for probably, I think it's somewhere around 2,000 plus years, maybe a bit more than that. A lot of these dudes in the Farstriders and stuff like that served for thousands of years, basically. So it's hard to tell exactly, but yeah, probably 2,000 years plus, somewhere around there. And I would estimate an elf probably dies around like 3,000-4,000 maybe. Who knows? And eventually the two of Malfurion and Tyrande end up leaving Jared to mourn on his own, seeing nothing that words can do for him as he still kneels beside his lover's still form. And that's where they step outside and they have other pressing matters, the uncertain arrival of King Varianrin at this upcoming 7. I don't know why they make it such a pressing issue that they're like, what if he doesn't show up when he literally sent a message saying, hey, I'm coming, I'm on the way. But that they make it a really big point throughout most of this early story. And that is when Tyrande also begins talking with Malfurion and being like, you know, there's some other things that Jared kind of left unresolved when he left, most notably his sister, Maiev Shadowsong, and just being like, and hopefully he finds it within himself to face those at some point too. And inside, Jared leans over, kissing his beloved one last time, and as Tyrande watches him do that, she has doubts whether Maiev would forgive or forget Jared's situation so soon. And that is where the focus obviously shifts to none other than Maiev Shadowsong.
None can escape my fury.
Who's watching the Sentinels train in Darnassus with a cold disdain, thinking that they are undisciplined and soft, seeing the Wardens as the higher military power, that they are the true warriors, jailers, and prisoners of the Night Elfin people. And she's working to her best of her ability to rebuild the Watchers. Though she does think about in the back of her mind how every time she closes her eyes, she still only sees one figure of Illidan's Stormrage. Though, as far as she got him in prison, like, just go look at him and be like, fucker, gotcha. I love World of Warcraft sometimes. It's so good. But yes, her solitude is broken when her top student arrives and gives her the news that a dying female arrived, and it was accompanied by a cloak male that she recognized to be her brother, Jared Shadowsong. And she's like, well, that's not what I expected. So she grabs her helm and declares that she must go and see him. And for Maiev, the return of her brother is as much a wound as it will be a reunion. And her underling hesitates, but Maev's cold insistent brook no argument, and reluctantly her student obeyed, and together the two would leap away into the boughs of Darnassus. And that's where we cut back to Ashenvale. You got Commander Haldrissa, who I'm just going to refer to as Haldrissa at this point because I'm tired of doing too long of names. Wrestling with weariness as her body is adjusting to the fact her eyes no longer has depth, and she's beginning to get reports from outposts scattered all about, the details of these not adding up. Some areas that should show signs of clear orc activity are oddly silent, while others show unsettling traces, broken arrows, signs of tracks, and vanishing wildlife where none should be. And with all of this, she's got the board up. She's, putting all the thumbtacks in with the red string and everything. She's drawing the lines, and she's like, yep, they're coming. They're coming. So she goes, she tells her person, she's like, hey, get a messenger ready. We got a really important message of the utmost importance. I mean, I want your fastest messenger. And they're like, okay, cool. I got this person over here, Adreya Cloudfire. And she's like, good choice. I think she's one of our best. And with that, she takes the message, hops on her Hippogriff Windstorm, and they off into the night. And her clutching onto the sealed report, thinking only about how she can fastest get to Darnassus, when suddenly, when she's just barely out of the general presence of her allies, orc archers strike from their shadows, the bolts whistling up from the trees into the wings of her hippogriff, the feathers scattering as the hippogriff falters and with a cry spirals downward, crashing violently through the branches. And as she's torn from the mount, she begins to stagger her fall by grabbing onto the branches, where eventually she lands on her feet at the ground, searching frantically for the pouch that she had been given by Haldrissa. When, of course, she grabs her glaive and is immediately set upon by some orcs. Those damn orcs. And she begins firing arrows. She begins using her glaive to chop down all of these enemies. But as this forest erupts with more and more of these orcs surrounding her in a tightening circle, she is exhausted, bleeding, and outnumbered, still doing her best to fight with savage determination, every strike getting her closer to the goal of getting to her message, thinking that she might die, but now her only opportunity is to at the very least destroy it before the Horde can seize it. And in the moment where she thinks, yep, I'm about to pass out, in comes Windstorm ripping into the battlefield, one wing completely messed up, battered, bloodied, but still 100% loyal. God, I love hippogriffs. Talons and beaks ripping through these orcs as they begin to scatter. The hippogriff doing its best to shield its rider, showing every ounce of courage that it has. But alas, its fate was merciless as these spears begin to plunge into the creature, and it collapses in agony, and the impact of it hurling the messenger to her side, and her own glaive cutting into her during the fall. She's grievously wounded and watches helplessly as her beloved companion gives its last breath to protect her. And as that's happening and she's bleeding out and dying on the floor, more than a dozen more orcs.
Oh my.
Their presence, this just wall of brutal strength, and at the head of it strides Garrosh Hellscream. Towering above his warriors, wielding Gorehowl, the weapon that slew Manaroth. And I think this is the first time in the story where they really describe that he broke the tusks off of Manaroth's skeleton and now wears them as shoulder guards. So yeah, this is the first time where I think we officially get information that the tusks of Manaroth are like official or out there now. But yeah, time to go get your loot. Tusks run anyone?
This is when everyone wanted get those and become an orc, dude. I got those as a drop, and it is so hard not to play an orc because you have those.
Dude, then they added the Makar, and you're like,
yeah, the racial's worse though.
But yes, as Garrosh makes it clear that this was no mere ambush, but this carefully orchestrated trap. And as he seizes the pouch, he scans the report, and with a grim satisfaction, he declares it a triumph, this victory shaped by the spirits and destiny that he has guided with his own hand. And with his raising voice, he proclaims that the Horde will seize Ashenvale for its own, and that they will build a new city within its wilds to rival even Orgrimmar itself. And obviously everyone's going crazy. He's swinging around Gorehowl, and it's making its iconic little scream as Garrosh vows more bloodshed, more conquest. He orders his forces eastward to meet up with Horde ships that are already en route. And as the messenger stirs faintly, her breath ragged, with one final moan, she falls silent and falls unconscious. We're back in Darnassus. You got them preparing Shalisar's funeral rites, getting her ready to be, I guess they bury them in the world tree, I think is what we eventually see. It was a bit unclear. Regardless, they're getting her body ready for essentially a funeral, as the Sisters of Elune are commencing this ceremonial song over her body that lies atop this marble platform etched with crescent moons. And through all of this, Jared never once leaves her side. And eventually he's just like, hey, Tyrande, you mind if I just have a moment alone here with, my beloved? And she's like, of course. And she leaves, and he begins to enjoy this moment of solitude with his beloved when that is broken by Chandra's Feathermoon. And she approaches, offering acknowledgement of Shalazar's merit and character, their words natural. Though I have to admit that Chandra's is like so socially inept, because like the second thing that she says to Jared is, hey, I feel bad for your dead wife here, but I have to admit I'm jealous that she was the one to marry you.
Hey, shooting's gotta shoot, dude.
Chandra's ain't waste no time, she said, hey, so you single now, right?
Yeah. You back on the market.
But yes, this admission hints at emotions long unspoken, where you did kind of get this little hint that maybe there was something back like prior to during the War of the Ancients novels, but they literally never had anything happen, which is why, like, during the scene, Chandra's admits, like, nothing ever happened. You have nothing to be sorry for. And it's like, no, literally, like, nothing happened. Y'all barely had scenes together. But he even admits that he had once had feelings for her as well, and that at this time, the grief and memory of everything that's happened are beginning to intertwine. As Chandra's brushes aside the omission, the moment is charged with this, oof, will they, won't they, before eventually she leans in, kisses him on the cheek, and leaves him to once again mourn on his own. And that's when he begins to think, you know what? Maybe it's time that I got out of here. Perhaps it's time to get a bite to eat. He heads out of the temple, and as he does, he looks to his right, and he sees Maiev Shadowsong. How couldn't you? It's like very apparent, armored in her full helm and everything, unmistakable, and he calls out to her, but as soon as he does, she is like, oh shit, books it. And he's like, okay, so he begins chasing after her, trying to be like, sister, please. And eventually he stumbles into a creature, a monstrous wolven form, humanoid, but still very, very wolven, with claws and fangs and burning eyes, and it slams Jared to the ground on accident before vanishing into the shadows. Shaken but unyielding, Jared continues to press on, trying his best to find Maiev, where eventually he comes around a corner and Maiev greets him with the tip of her crescent pressed against his chest. Her crescent glaive, I guess I should say. But yes, and she quickly is just like, hey, I thought I told you not to chase unknown enemies into the forest. I thought I taught you that. And he was like, you did. And she's like, hey, why did you abandon the Night Elven people? Like, I was really proud of you. And the disgrace that you brought on our family name after doing that, like, why did you do that? And Jared is just like, hey, like, I am sorry for doing all that. I regret how I handled it, even if I do maybe think that I was right. But through all this, Maiev, of course, remains hardened, proclaiming that she had always put duty above all else, that her years, her millennia dedicated to the Wardens and her role as Illidan's jailer, insisting that she had no regrets and that she could never be like him. But her cold mask begins to falter when she notices a small scratch on Jared's face near his eye. And she's like, what's that? Who did that to you? And Jared's like, you're never going to believe this. There was like this wolven creature, but it walked on two legs, and I ran into it in the forest. And she's like, oh yeah, there's an enemy nearby? And as he begins to describe it a bit more, and she's like, oh, never mind. You just ran into one of the Worgen. And he's like, one of the Worgen? She's like, yeah, they're like, they got invited here by fucking Malfurion and Tyrande and those fucking people. Yeah, they live here now. They're cursed by, the ancient ritual. I mean, you weren't around for that war either, but yeah, they're cursed. And he's like, okay.
Wait till he hears about Gen.
And she sneers about them being like, they're cowardly skulkers of the night. When eventually Jared's just like, hey, I would really like to, try and resolve this a bit more. And Maiev just closes the conversation with an icy condolence saying, like, I'm sorry about your lover, but that they would hear from each other soon.
Hey, you know how you're always telling people to listen to Tides of Lore?
Of course, I am my own biggest fan.
Well, now it's even easier. We're on Apple Podcasts, Audible, Castbox, Spotify, and YouTube.
So I can tell them, wherever you listen, that they can just hit subscribe or follow.
Exactly. No matter where you are, Azeroth Stories will find you.
That's where we cut to somebody I was not expecting to see in this novel. The highborn survivors of Eldrathirlas, or better known as Dire Maul to most Warcraft players. And yeah, these guys are a group of Night Elven mages that have fled Dire Maul back to Darnassus, and the Night Elves are still kind of trying to figure out what they want to do with them too, because they don't have the best history with mages, and they really don't. The Highborn don't really intend to ever stop using magic, so...
Wasn't arcane magic still banned by Night Elves at this time?
Yes, exactly, which is why they're like, you're Night Elves, but you guys don't seem to regret all of the terrible things that arcane magic has done. And that is kind of where this story kicks in, because you have this highborn figure known as Varden Skyseeker attempting this dangerous arcane ritual under the shadow of the great trees, and eventually the forest itself begins to rebel all around him, and their concentration is broken as these branches begin to thrash violently and these trees bend and twist unnaturally, and eventually it breaks their circle apart completely and their ritual collapses into chaos, leaving nothing but fear, where eventually Malfurion Stormrage busts through the tree line, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? I told you no goddamn magic. And they're like, hey, we were petitioning to be able to use more magic. And they're like, yeah, petitioning. I did not pass that petition yet. What are you doing? And he's like, does your archmage know that you're getting up to this? And he's like, no. And he's like, well, then I'll be talking with him for sure. He's like, do you know about Ajar's betrayal? Do you know all of the damage the Burning Legion has done and everything that happened? And they're like, yes, I know. And though his anger burns through, he offers a resolve, being like, if you guys can at the very least follow our policy till we get you integrated into our society, perhaps we can work out better stuff. But you need to be patient, and you need to adhere to our guidelines until then. And Varden bows, being like, oh yes, I'm so sorry. How could I be so foolish? But on the inside, he's like, fuck you, Malfurion, you fucking bitch. I hate you, you stupid bitch. Basically declaring to himself that would only last to a certain point. And as the gathering of all of these highborns begins to disperse, Varden storms away. Contempt, he kicks his foot at what he thinks is undergrowth, but his boot ends up striking what we know from the narrator as a lifeless hand, one of his fallen highborn, his own kin, lying unnoticed in the forest. Where the narrative once again shifts back over to that Horde fleet. You remember them, right, from the start? Yeah, well, they're only days away from landfall, and the ocean has not been very nice to them, and is still not being very nice to them, as these waves strike at their ships like stone walls, this lightning cleaving down through the sky. Amid this storm's fury, Captain Brown looks around and he sees one of these vessels caught up in flames, and at first he's like, I mean, it should only be a light burn if it got caught on fire, but he realizes that it has spread all across because the creature inside has broken free and their cargo has been set ablaze. And as their powder stores go up in flames, he sees more ships going down with the storm, as he feels even his own vessel underneath begin to heave unnaturally, the timbers groaning and splitting as terrified orcs begin scrambling to the cargo bay. And he's like, all right, guys, more sleep powder. Remember, more sleep powder. And they're like, yes, more sleep powder. And they're like, we should also do our best to get more sleep powder over to those other people that are like on fire and stuff. And the crew is like, okay, cool. So they start getting ready to try and go help out their other people. It doesn't really work out, because with a deafening crack, the vessel hulls bursts outward from underneath as a massive hoof shatters the planks and seawater begins to pour in. And he does his best to try and subdue the creature with more of the sleeping powder, but it doesn't quite do enough. As more seawater begins to pour in, the creature surges from its prison, once again kicking again, and Bryn fills his ship being dragged in by the ocean, the creature's last roar shaking the sea as it's dragged underneath. Bryln and a bunch of his crewmates do their best to jump off, though the sea is, well, terrible, and a bunch of them are still being dragged under by the storm. Though despite all of this, he manages to reach the fleet's flagship. Getting aboard, he looks around and sees that he has 8 ships remaining, and he says that it'll have to be enough, that hopefully as long as he brings these 8 remaining monsters, Garrosh will forgive his loss of the others. As Malfurion is walking the temple gardens of Darnassus, eventually he is interrupted by a figure known as Edrig. Not Etrig, Edrig.
Get it right. Holy.
The aide to King and Greymane. Yeah, I love Warcraft, but their naming sometimes is so low effort. I'm like, there are multiple characters that are the exact same name.
I thought that orc popped out of nowhere.
Each is just like, what's up, man? It's like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah.
No. But yes, he's like, hey, again, Greymane wants to talk with you. And the Archdruid's like, all right, well, I actually want to talk to him. So let's not keep him waiting. Let's get going. And he goes, and as the Archdruid follows him off into the forest, where he eventually comes across King Gen Greymane. And he's like, what's up, Gen? Like, hey, how you doing? And Gen's like, as best as exiles can. And he's like, don't you worry, like, Gilneas remains strong. And he's just like, yeah, Gilneas is a name only at this point. So he's like, well, you can't really blame yourself for everything that's happened. You couldn't have known that a werewolf curse was going to go through your people and all that. And he's like, yeah, but still I yearn for redemption, brother. I yearn for redemption.
He's not going to get it, bro. How about you do better for your people?
As Malfurion listens patiently, he reassures Gen that the coming summit is an opportunity for just that, and that Gilneas can be welcomed back into the Alliance, curse or not. And Gen's eyes are doubtful at first, but he does light up a bit when Malfurion reveals that Varian Wrynn will be in attendance himself. And the thought of reconciliation with Stormwind, his former ally and rival, strikes the spark of hope within the aging king. And with hearing this, he's like, yep, we will be the best. Like, I promise you, we will live with the utmost humility, and we will show so much loyalty and strength and pride. Like, you'll see, it's going to be crazy. And Malfurion's like, yep, I intend for that to be the case. And the two of them eventually depart, Malfurion lingering in the forest where his sharp eyes catch movement of a dark lupine figure slipping through the underbrush. And though he knows, obviously, well, it is a worgen, he still thinks about all those years ago and those decisions made back during the War of the Satyr, thinking about how the curse of the worgen might have never even touched the Gilneans if not for the choices that he had made. And, well, back in Ashenvale, unwilling to wait for Darnassus' reply, Haldrissa is like, time to take matters into our own hand, guys. At dawn, we're leading a scout patrol. We're going out to the east of Maestra's Post. And eventually, we're going to find out what the Horde are up to. So through all of this, they head out. She's taking some of her Sentinels, advancing with caution, having her most trusted sharp eye in front, Xanon, there, where eventually he comes rushing back, urgently pressing Haldrissa to follow as they all mount their lightsabers, moving swiftly and silently through the trees. And as they get closer, he's like, listen. She's like, I don't hear shit. But then she does hear it. Buzzing, cracking, the sharp report of wood breaking. And the recollection dawns on her. She's like, the Horde want wood. They need wood. They're wooded up, brother. But yes, they begin making their way closer now on foot as the acrid stench of fuel and steam begin to fill their nostrils, as that is a surefire sign of one thing they think: goblins. And just moments later, they behold just that, the horror of goblin shredders reducing a towering tree's limbs down piece by piece as this saw rips through it like a blade cutting through water. And then another shredder appears, and another, and she's like, dang. 6 shredders? I don't know, that's a lot, but you know what? We're Sentinels. We got this. We can take them. And then just as she's like, all right, guys, let's get ready, she looks to the horizon. And is that Gandalf coming with the Rohirrim? No, that is dozens more shredders emerging from the tree line. And tons more than she considers that she could ever take on, and this advance of them is just relentless as they cut down tree after tree after tree, systematically reducing Ashenvale to ruin as all of the Sentinels begin to gasp in despair. As Haldrissa's like, all right, yep, time to retreat. Let's get a bigger force for this one. The wind betrays their movement as a shredder bursts through the trees with startling speed, a goblin pilot shrieking with maniac laughter as the whirling blades of the shredder begin swinging around. And just so that we're clear, if you've never played World of Warcraft, a shredder is like a mech suit for like cutting trees. Like, think Iron Giant if it had like a saw blade and a claw. But not that big, just similar shape. But yes, as the blade lashes out at Haldrissa, it catches her across the shoulder, and though she's wearing plate armor, it rips clean through, blood streaking her shoulder as she staggers back, barely avoiding a killing blow and bracing for another attack. But a sentinel glaive comes flying in, and it bounces off of the shredder's armored plating, but without hesitation, Xanon leaps on top of the machine, dagger in hand, scrambling towards the pilot as he launches the shredder into a wild, jerking spin, trying to send the Night Elf flinging from the machine, whirling dangerously for everyone around them. When Haldrissa throws her own glaive, and eventually she doesn't see any way to get through this wall of absolute steel when she sees one of these trees that has been damaged but not quite cut down, and she slams her weight into it, the tree coming collapsing over on top of the shredder as Xanon is thrown from the shredder, his body hitting the ground as he seems to fall unconscious, and the tree collapses atop the goblin, crushing him before the gas tank is struck, and the entire shredder explodes.
Is there cool music as they're walking away?
Not quite, because Haldrissa's like, all right, well, we definitely got to get out of here now. If they didn't know we were here, they do now. So she grabs the unconscious sentinel, dragging him on top of the Nightsaber, and she just begins to book it, hoping that these other goblins will think it was just an accident and it will buy her a bit more time. And as she regroups with her other sentinels, she's like, hey, tend to him. He's got a boo-boo. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. He does have a boo-boo. His skull has been smashed in.
There's no healing spell for that, right?
I mean, I would, if it can bring you back to like, it restructured that other guy's chest cavity during the Velen shorts.
Yeah, it's so like...
I would think there could be.
It's just like they pick and choose.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, yeah, it does not cover... Holy magic does not cover brain damage. Should have got that in your package. As grief begins to fully consume Haldrissa, who Xanon had been one of her most trusted friends, she begins to vow revenge against the Horde, and specifically those filthy goblins and their contraptions, where we cut to the preparations for Darnassus to become the staging ground for the Alliance Summit. As they see off the shore all sorts of ships approaching Darnassus, official emissaries with small escorts, that they are all getting ready to arrive at the city for their grand meeting. And the first one of these to arrive is a emissary from Theramore, a figure by the name of Archmage Turvosh, who greets Tyrande and is like, hey, unfortunately, Jaina kind of got to stay in Theramore right now because, well, Garrosh is on the warpath, and that's the only other city that's pretty close. And she's like, understandable. Tell her, give her my best regards. Predator dap up, if you will. And she's like, yeah, just, follow those dudes. They'll get you where you need to be going. We will all be meeting soon enough. And Tyrande hopes that this will be the smoothest of reception days. And the next to arrive are the dwarves of Ironforge, as she thinks, she's like, this is the first time that we're going to have 3 clans showing up, so let's see how that goes. The first person to arrive, representing the Bronzebeards of Ironforge, is Thagris Anvilmar. You remember the dwarf from the Varian story?
Oh, yeah.
That's him. Big dog. The last remaining descendant of the Anvilmar line, kind of the previous ruling kings of the Bronzebeards before Magni and all of them. And yeah, he's like, hey guys, how you doing? And they're like, we're doing good. Make yourself comfortable, make yourself at home. And he's like, you got food? They're like, yeah. They're like, we got better than food too. We got drink. And he's like, that's what I was hoping to hear. So he goes off cheerful and happy, ready to get his drink on, as a dwarf does. The next people that come through this portal are the Dark Iron Dwarves, led by this emissary known as Drukhon, who we briefly mentioned back during the Kurdran episode where we discussed the Council of the Three Hammers kind of first forming. He was the guy that was always with Moira and made his snide ass remarks to Skyrie. So that is him. And he's like, hey guys, we're here. Nice to meet you. And Tyrande admits that she's never met like any of the Dark Irons before, so she's like, you know, nice to meet you. We've got food, we've got drink. And they're like, yeah, we're not gonna drink any of your food or drink. We don't trust you like that. And she's like, cool enough. Let me know if you change your minds. We'll get those removed for you, as they begin dragging their own spirits and their own food towards their quarters. Eventually, the last of these clans to arrive is, of course, the Wildhammers, where you get that boy Kurdrin Wildhammer once again returning. As the Wildhammers come through, they come through with this bolsterous, warm laugh that booms throughout all of Darnassus as they're swinging their hammers around and letting the people know the Wildhammers are here. And they're like, welcome, Kurdrin. It's nice to see you again. And he's like, yeah, it's nice to see you again, too. And he's like, we are happy that there was no, like, fighting amongst the dwarves. And he's like, yeah, actually, we ended up having a dice game down below because we agreed that we would all arrive at the same time at the island, but no one ended up choosing. We didn't have a discussion about who would enter the portals first, so we had to have an argument about that. So we bet, or we played a dice game. She's like, oh, really? She's like, well, considering the order it came in, that seems a little bit convenient. And he's just like, I wouldn't know anything about that. I would never fix a dice game, my lady. And she does think about it. She's like, the Bronzebeards first, you know, the ceremonial, almost like symbolic ranking of them coming in first. And then not to be slighted, the Dark Irons coming in second. And lastly, the Wildhammers, who genuinely could just not even give a shit, coming in last. As she's like, all right, well, we're happy to have you here, Kurdrin. Go get yourself set up. We'll get to talking soon. But despite all of the arrivals, Tyrande and Malfurion think to each other as they look, and they're like, no Varian. That's not no Varian. Not great. But Tyrande begins to think that this entire summit could rest on Varian's presence alone, that the stance that he takes could lead to unity or division, and without him, the unity of the Alliance risks fracturing further. And as Malfurion and Tyrande begin to withdraw to this temple, they are eventually intercepted by the Highborn leaders, the Archmage Mordant Evanshade and his protege Verdin Skyseeker. And Verdin was that shitty, ambitious tool that Malfurion caught off in the forest, ends up admitting to Malfurion, hey, we haven't seen one of our guys since that spell. He vanished, and no one's seen him since. And Malfurion's like, I wonder how that could have happened. And he's like, okay, well, I'll handle that myself. You, with me, we're going to go check that out. And he's like, tell me what you know. He's like, when's the last time people saw him? They're like, at the spellcasting circle. And it's like, and no one realized until later? He's like, no one realized until later. He's like, okay, well, they get back to the ritual site. And he begins to commune with the land itself. And the grass and the trees are just like, yep, there were people here. And he's like, thanks, grass and trees. You've been a great help. They're like, we can't see very well because of the arcane upheaval that occurred. And Malfurion probably gives a mean-ass glare to Varden, who is just like, look, man, it's not my... I just do magic. I'm just the magic guy. And eventually, as Malfurion continues to question Varden, Varden keeps giving him what seemed to only be half answers, so he just dismisses him. He's like, yeah, just go back. I'll handle this alone. You've been fucking useless. So, suspecting that he is just basically leading him on false trails or deliberately misleading him, he begins searching on his own. And throughout this search, eventually, he is warned himself by the forest of an intruder. And with the flick of a finger, he commands the branches of the undergrowth to twist into a living cage, pollen choking this unseen spy as he pushes the brush back and reveals Edric, the aide to King Gen Greyman. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? As he begins to like spiral the wind around himself and clearing the pollen out of his face. He's like, why are you spying on me? And Edric's like, look, man, you got me. I wasn't expecting to get caught. I was spying, but I wasn't spying on you. I don't trust them. Malfurion's like, who? The Highborn? You don't trust them? And he's like, yeah, Gen has heard the history about their people, and we don't trust them. Which, that's a bit ironic, don't you think? Gen not trusting people because of their history while looking for...
Someone needs to just bring this up to Gen and throw it in his face, his past. I can do it.
I think you have, brother. I think you have. But yes, Malfurion accepts this as the truth, but he's like, hey, you can't be doing this, though, because this could imperil your guys' admission to the Alliance, and you don't need that right now. So don't fucking do that. And Nithrick's like, got you. He bows and dips out of there. And now Malfurion, with only the trees around him, is left alone with the whispers of the forest, drawn to a grim conclusion that perhaps that all of this wasn't an accident. Perhaps this is an opportunity of sabotage. And with the summit about to begin, Varian's role being uncertain, even a minor disruption could weaken the trust that has already been twisted. Where eventually you have Shalisair's farewell, as Jared is obviously in attendance, watching as his beloved is given the highest of, well, not the highest because she strictly wanted a modest burial, but still given the most respect by the priestesses of Elune, where eventually Tyrande bathes her body in this light of Elune that they say is like a silver flame upon her, and she begins to speak of Elune's first gift of the glow that allowed mortals to see through the darkness and find comfort in despair. And through all of this service, Jared just is locked on the face of his lover, where eventually he witnesses something that no one else perceives, as a pale silver aura rises gently from her body, the glow taking the shape of a figure, hesitates and turns towards him, and in that instance, flood of memories overwhelm him. The tender moments across centuries, recollections nearly lost to time. Then before his eyes, the shape collapses inward and becomes a single star drifting up into the moonlight before vanishing. And as Jared gasps, he realizes that no one around him even saw it besides him. As beyond in Darnassus, the druids receive her body, and with reverence they place her in a bed woven from grass and shrubs, and at Malfurion's command the wind stirs, and as life rises to meet her, these green shoots sprout, bursting into blossoms of white and gold until a mantle of flowers covers her form, and in their quiet beauty she is embraced not only by Elune, but by the living world she once walked in. And to Jared it is a bittersweet moment as he finds those flowers to be exactly as Shalisar herself would have chosen, recalling the scent to be that of her presence. And in that time, the gathering dwindles until only Tyrande, Malfurion, and a small circle remains as the silence stretches, heavy yet tender. As Jared then ends up thanking them, he says to Tyrande, he's like, hey, you know, that little magic trick you did with the light there, that was really cool. I appreciated that. That really got to me. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she's like, Elune must have favored you and favored her, granting you one final farewell that no one else could see. And though his heart aches, Jared does feel a sense of ease, believing that his beloved spirit had truly spoken to him one last time before going away. And though the comfort of that farewell fills him, there is a deep wound that does also fill him, and that is the fact that Maiev did not attend. And he laments about this, about how his sister didn't come to pay respects, and Tyrande and Malfurion kind of side-eye each other. And they're like, should you tell him? Should I tell him? And at this, eventually, they begin to reveal that Maiev had, lived as a warden, and eventually Tyrande ended up killing some wardens and freeing Illidan, and that kind of broke her, and her pursuit became obsession. And Tyrande admits that in a moment of crisis, Maiev had abandoned her to chase Illidan. Malfurion doesn't even want to play soft. He's like, abandoned her, because at first she was just like, yeah, she kind of went to go do her own thing, and Malfurion's like, nuh-uh, and even had declared Tyrande dead to rally others against him. And this revelation cuts Jared deeply, twisting with grief and guilt about what his sister had done and that he was not there. And Tyrande's like, yeah, if not for Kael'thas exposing this, like, I probably would have died, and no one would have ever known the truth. And despite all this, despite Illidan's part in saving me, she still pursued him to Outland, where she was captured and tortured, and yet still pressed on, ultimately taking part in his downfall. As Jared feels this chill stir within him, he realizes that through all of this, Maiev had returned to Darnassus alive, making amends in her own way, but despite this, she was always going to be scarred from everything that she had been through, and the wounds between the two of them were not so far gone either. As Jared then asks for solitude, Malfurion and Tyrande departing him, Malfurion eventually is like, hey, why didn't you tell him everything about how you and Maiev have, not really gotten along too well since he got back as much as you claim? And she's like, that's for Maiev to let him know about if she wants to. And that's where we cut to another scene where back at the portal, more people begin appearing as High Tinkerer Geblin Mekator emerges waddling on a Mechanostrider with massive arms on it, jerking unpredictably to cheer. And as Tyrande and Malfurion are like, hey, what's going on? He's like, howdy, and goes to have the mechanical hand shake Malfurion's, and they do. And eventually he asks, how's the pressure? And he's like, it's fine. He's like, good. We broke a lot of hands to get it there. And they're like, okay, cool. Where are we set up? They're like, you're over by the archery people. And they're like, cool. We've been wanting to try out some new archery stuff anyway. So as they begin going, Tyrande and Malfurion begin discussing with each other when eventually they hear some sort of commotion, and immediately the two of them begin booking off, where they find that the gnomes advancing into Darnassus had crossed path with the Dark Irons, and their sparks had been flying instantly. Drukon snarling that Geblin's walker had nearly trampled him, and the High Tinkerer unfazed quipped with dry humor, remarking that he could measure the exact force needed to cleave a dwarf in two. And immediately with that, weapons are drawn, gnomish contraptions whirl to life, and the air crackles with the promise of violence. Before Tyrande steps between them, Elune's light bathing her in a glowing, radiating authority as her voice cuts through with fury. Calm yet immovable, she declares that any who came to this summit were under her protection, and they owed respect to one another, and commanded them to cool the fires between them. As Drukon lowers his weapon in a grunt of displeasure, and Geblin mutters that about further adjustments to his walker, both sides withdraw, but the moment still leaves a stain on the air that just how fragile the unity of this summit could be. And as Malfurion murmurs to himself uneasily, thinking about how this facade of unity is already beginning to splinter, that the Cataclysm had left nerves raw, and even the smallest insults carried the weight of entire nations. As Tyrande, however, tries to urge the perspective that fractured they were, that the Alliance still had answered the call to gather, and that meant something. That meant hope. Though in that moment, Malfurion casts one final glance back at the portal, and one more time ponders, where is King Varian Rin? And that is where our story is going to end for the day.
Where is King Varian Rin?
I don't even know, man. I guess he's on a boat.
Good for him.
Maybe he's caught up in the same...
Got a cocktail going.
Yeah. He's got a yacht, bro. Yeah, not like that. He's not on a boat like... He's on like a Gallywix yacht.
Yeah. Good for him.
Do you have any questions or comments or anything you wanted to throw in here at the end, Tim?
To the beast.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea what it could be?
Ooh, the only thing with hooves are the woolly rhinos and mammoths and Tauren. I don't know.
From Northrend. Remember, from Northrend.
There's the other Tauren specifically from Northrend.
No, not them, unfortunately. Still bigger, but you'll see soon enough, my friend. I guess this is for next time. Little mystery.
Tell me what you think it is in the comments, guys. What is this beast?
Yeah. If you have not read this story or don't know, please, yeah, I'm curious what you guys would predict it to be, because I struggled for a long time trying to figure it out, and I imagine there's some hardcore WoW heads who played so much Wrath of the Lich King, they're like, well, it's obviously, but we'll see. But yes, if you guys did make it this far, please make sure you drop us a like, a comment, a subscribe. Can my cat stop fucking around with each other? Make sure you drop us a like, a comment, a subscribe. All of that would be super amazing. We are on the climb up now to 2,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and we're always looking to engage with you guys more. If you do want to engage with us more, consider checking out our Patreon, where we got exclusive VODs, ad-free episodes, all the fun stuff. We're going to be doing some more discussion stuff over there soon, so make sure to keep an eye out for that, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love, as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.